The lights on the ship flickered as Zaruka checked her equipment one more time. Her green, scaly hands moved over the controls with care. She had been waiting for this day for 3 years. Today she would see real humans for the first time. Zaruka was not like other aliens in the galaxy. She belonged to a race called the Veltar. They looked like tall lizards that walked on 2 legs. Their skin was green and covered in small scales. They had long tails and yellow eyes that could see heat from other living things. The Veltar were very smart and loved to study other life forms. The big ship called Stellar Harmony floated in space near Earth's moon. Inside the ship, hundreds of Veltar worked at their jobs. Some studied stars, others looked at planets, and a few, like Zaruka, studied alien life. She was the best at her job on the whole ship. For months they had listened. 2 human radio signals, they heard human music, news, and TV shows, but they had never seen a real human up close. The Veltar government had picked Zaruka to be the first one to meet humans face to face. She felt proud but also nervous. Captain Morthek walked into Zaruka's lab. Was old for a Veltar, with darker green scales and scars on his face from many space battles. "Are you ready?" he asked in their clicking language. "Yes, Captain," Zaruka replied. She looked at herself in the mirror. Her lab coat was clean, and her tools were ready. "I have studied human biology for years. I know everything about them." Captain Morthek made a sound like laughing. "Knowing about them and meeting them are different things. Be careful, young one." Zaruka did not understand why he seemed worried. Humans were just another alien race to study. She had met aliens from 50 different worlds. How could humans be any different? The ship's speakers made a loud beeping sound. A voice said, "Human ship approaching. All crew 2 stations." Zaruka felt her heart beat faster. Through the big window in her lab, she could see a small human ship getting closer. It was white and silver, much smaller than their ship. Strange symbols were painted on its side. "They call it the Denver," Captain Morthek said, reading from a screen. 2 humans are coming aboard, a captain and a cultural expert. Zaruka nodded. She had read about human military ranks and jobs. She knew that captains were leaders, and cultural experts helped. Different groups understand each other. The 2 ships connected with a soft bump, or moved between them so the humans could breathe. Zaruka watched the main door through security cameras. Her special eyes could see the heat from the human bodies even before the door opened. The door slid open with a hiss. 2 figures stepped through. Zaruka had seen pictures of humans, but seeing real ones was completely different. They were taller than she expected. Their skin was not green like hers, but a light brown color that seemed to glow with warmth. The first human was male. He had short dark hair and wore a blue uniform with shiny buttons. His face was strong but kind. When he smiled at the Veltar greeting committee, Zaruka saw his white teeth. The second human was female. She had long blonde hair tied back and wore the same blue uniform. She carried a bag full of papers and electronic devices. But it was the male human that made Zaruka's world change forever, the moment she saw him on her screen. Something happened inside her body. Her scales began to feel hot. Her tail started to twitch. Her breathing became fast and shallow. The room seemed to spin around her. "What is happening to me?" she whispered. Her people, the Veltar, were cold-blooded like the lizards of Earth. They did not feel strong emotions very often. They only felt the urge to mate once every few years when the right conditions happened. But now, looking at this human male, Zaruka felt something she had never felt before. Her body temperature rose. Her special heat-seeing eyes could not look away from the human's warm body. Every movement he made seemed perfect. Every word he spoke, even though she could not understand his language yet, sounded like music. "I must go meet them," she said. Trying to sound normal, Captain Morthek looked at her strangely. "Are you feeling well? Your scales look brighter than usual?" Zaruka did not answer. She walked quickly toward the meeting room where the humans waited. With each step, the feeling in her body grew stronger. By the time she reached the door, her hands were shaking. She pressed the button to open the door. The 2 humans stood inside with 3 other Veltar officials. When the male human turned to look at her, their eyes met. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. Zarika felt like lightning had hit her body. Her reproductive system, which had been quiet or whole. Adult life suddenly awakened with incredible force. Her scales turned from green to a bright golden color. Her tail curved in a way that meant attraction in Veltar body language. The male human stepped forward. "Hello," he said in careful Veltar language. "I am Captain Jake Murphy."
This is Lisa.
Park, our cultural liaison. Jake Murphy. Even his name sounded wonderful to Zarika's ears. I am... ... She tried to speak but could not form words. The heat inside her body was too strong. She could smell his scent, different from any Veltar male. It was warm and clean and made her dizzy. Lisa Park looked concerned. Right. The other Veltar in the room stared at Zarika in shock. They had never seen one of their kind act this way. Elder Velshan, the oldest alien in the room, made a gasping sound. "Impossible," he whispered in their language. "She is going into heat. That should not happen from just seeing an alien." Zarika heard his words but could not control herself. Every instinct in her body told her to get closer to Jake Murphy. She took a step forward, then another. Jake did not move away. Instead, he looked at her with kind, concerned eyes. "Are you feeling sick?" Jake asked gently. "Do you need help?" His voice was so warm and caring that Zarika almost fainted. Male of her own species had ever spoken to her with such kindness. The combination of his physical presence and his gentle nature was too much for her system to handle. I must go," she managed to say in broken human language. She turned and ran from the room as fast as her legs could carry her. Behind her, she heard Jake call out, "Wait, is she hurt?" But Zareka could not stop. She ran through the halls of the ship until she reached her private quarters. She locked the door and fell onto her sleeping platform, her body burning with feelings she could not understand or control. Through her wall, she could hear the confused voices of humans and Veltar trying to figure out what had gone wrong with their first meeting. All Zarika could think about was Jake Murphy's warm brown eyes and gentle voice. Something had changed in her forever, and she did not know if it was wonderful or terrible. Zarika lay on her sleeping platform for hours, her body still burning with strange new feelings. Her scales had not returned to their normal green color. They stayed bright gold, which meant her body was still in the mating state. She had never felt anything like this before. A soft knock came at her door. "Zarika, it is Dr. Thexmore. Please let me in. I need to check if you are well." Dr. Thexmore was the ship's medical officer. He was older than Zarika and had seen many strange things in his years of space travel. She trusted him more than anyone. "Else on the ship, come in," she said weakly. The door slid open and Dr. Thexmore walked in. He was carrying his medical scanning device. When he saw Zarika's golden scales, his yellow eyes grew wide. "By the ancient eggs," he whispered, "you are truly in heat." But how? There are no Veltar males nearby who could trigger this response. Sat up slowly. It was the human. The male one. Jake Murphy. When I saw him, my body just ... changed. Dr. Thexmore ran his scanner over Zarika's body. The device beeped and showed numbers on its small screen. He looked at the results with confusion. "This is impossible," he said. "Your hormone levels are higher than I have ever seen. Your reproductive system is fully active. But humans in Veltar have completely different biology. There should be no attraction between our species." "But there is," Zareka said. "I felt it the moment I saw him. It was like my body recognized something it had been waiting for all my life." Dr. Thexmore sat down in a chair next to her bed. He was quiet for a long time, thinking. Finally, he spoke. "I need to run more tests. This could be a medical emergency, or it could be a scientific discovery. Either way, we must understand what is happening to you." Meanwhile, in the meeting room, Jake Murphy and Lisa Park sat with the Veltar officials. The mood was tense. Confused, Elder Velshan kept making worried clicking sounds with his tongue. "Did we do something wrong?" Jake asked. The young scientist seemed upset when she saw us. Captain Morthek shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "It is ... complicated. Zarika had an unusual reaction to your presence. We are not sure why." Lisa Park opened her notebook computer and began typing. As a cultural expert, She had studied many alien races, but she had never seen anything like what happened with Zarika. In our research about your people, Lisa said carefully, we learned that Veltar do not show strong emotions very often. What we saw seemed very emotional. Elder Velshan made a deep rumbling sound. You are correct. Our people are logical and calm. We do not have sudden emotional outbursts. What happened to Zarika is not normal for us. Jake felt worried. He had been chosen for this mission because he was good at helping people and solving problems before becoming a diplomat. He had been a medic in the human Space Force. He knew how to take care of sick or hurt people. Is she sick? Jake asked. I used to be a doctor. Maybe I can help. The Veltar officials looked at each other nervously. Captain Morthek spoke first. She is not sick in the way you mean, but she is having a strong biological reaction. We think it might be connected to seeing your species for the first time. Lisa typed more notes into her computer. What kind of biological reaction? Before anyone could answer, Dr. Thexmore's voice came through the ship's communication system. Captain Morthek, please come to Medical Bay immediately. Bring the humans with you. I've made an important discovery. The group walked through the ship's hallways to the medical bay. The walls were white and clean, with strange Veltar medical equipment everywhere. Zareka sat on an examination table, still golden in color but looking more calm than before. When Jake walked into the room, Zareka's scales brightened again. She looked at him with wide yellow eyes, but this time she did not run away. Again, Jake said softly. Are you feeling better? Zareka nodded slowly. Yes, thank you. I am sorry I ran away. I was scared and confused. Dr. Thexmore stood next to a large computer screen showing charts and graphs. I have been running tests on Zareka's blood and studying human biology data we received from Earth. I have found something amazing. Everyone gathered around the screen. Dr. Thexmore pointed to different colored lines on the graphs. Humans produce chemicals called pheromones. These are scent signals that affect other humans. But it seems these same chemicals also affect Veltar. Biology in a way we never expected. Lisa leaned closer to look at the data. What kind of effect? Human pheromones trigger our reproductive cycle, Dr. Vexmore explained. But not just that. Your emotional warmth, your body heat, even the way you speak creates a perfect combination that awakens something in our biology. Jake looked confused. But why? Our species evolved on different worlds. How could we be compatible? Dr. Vexmore smiled, which was rare for a Veltar. That is the mystery. It should not be possible, but it is happening. Zareka's body is responding to you as if you were a perfect genetic match. Zareka spoke quietly from her table. It is not just physical. When you spoke to me with kindness, when you asked if I needed help, I felt something I have never felt before, like you truly cared about my well-being. Elder Velshan made worried clicking sounds. This could be dangerous. If other Veltar females have the same reaction, it could cause chaos in our society. As if to prove his point, the ship's alarm system began beeping. Captain Morthek pressed a button on the wall. What is the emergency? He asked. A voice from the bridge answered, Captain, we are receiving reports from other ships in the fleet. Several female crew members are showing signs of reproductive activation. They all started when the humans arrived. Everyone in the medical bay looked at each other with surprise and worry. Dr. Thexmore checked his instruments again. It is spreading, he said. The human presence is affecting Veltar females throughout the fleet. Jake felt responsible and concerned. Are they in danger? Are we hurting them? Zareka stood up from the examination table. Her golden scales had calmed to a lighter shade, but they still showed she was affected. We are not in danger, she said, but we are changing. For the first time in our lives, we are feeling things our people have forgotten how to feel. Dr. Vexmore looked at his medical data one more time. I need to study this more. But I think we are seeing something that has never happened before in galactic history. It's a completely different species that somehow complement each other perfectly. Lisa typed furiously on her computer. We need to establish new protocols for interaction. If human presence affects Veltar biology this strongly, we need to find safe ways to continue our diplomatic relations. Concern, what do you need? How can we help make this easier for you and your people? Zarika felt her heart warm at his caring words. Even in the middle of this strange situation, the human was thinking about her comfort and safety. No Veltar male had ever shown such consideration. I think she said slowly, we need to learn more about each other. This reaction is not going away. We must understand it if we want to move forward. Captain Morthak nodded. Agreed. But we must be careful. The other ships in our fleet are reporting similar situations. This could change everything between our species. Outside the medical bay windows, more human ships could be seen approaching. The first contact between humans and Veltar was becoming much more complicated than anyone had planned. But as Zarika looked at Jake Murphy's kind face, she wondered if this complication might actually be the beginning of something wonderful. 3 days had passed since the first meeting between humans and Veltar. The situation had grown more complicated with each passing hour. Reports came in from 12 different Veltar ships. Almost every female on board was showing signs of the same reaction that Zarika had experienced. Commander Velshan stood in the main command center of the largest ship in the fleet. His dark green scales were almost black with anger and worry. Around him, dozens of Veltar officers worked at their stations, but the mood was tense. This is a disaster, Commander Velshan said to his advisors. Half our female crew members cannot do their jobs properly. They are distracted and emotional. Some refuse to leave their quarters. Captain Morthek tried to calm the situation. Commander Dr. Thexmore believes this is a natural biological response. The females are not sick or broken. They are simply reacting to something new. Something new? Commander Velshan's voice rose higher. These humans have disrupted an entire fleet with their presence. Some of my officers think this is a biological weapon designed to weaken us. On the human ship Denver, Jake Murphy sat in his small cabin reading reports from Earth. The news was not good. Some Earth politicians were calling for the humans to return home immediately. They worried that the situation with the Veltar was too dangerous to continue. Lisa Park knocked on his door. Jake, we need to talk. I just received a message from the Veltar command ship. They want to meet with us again, but this time they have demands. Jake looked up from his reading. What kind of demands? They want us to stay in sealed environmental suits when we interact with them. They also want to limit our contact to only male Veltar officers. Jake frowned. He had been thinking about Zareka for the past 3 days. Her reaction to seeing him had been intense, but he could tell she was intelligent and kind. He wanted to help her understand what was happening. What about Zareka? Asked. She was supposed to be our main contact for cultural exchange. Lisa sat down in the chair across from Jake's desk. That's the problem. Commander Velshan says she is too affected by our presence to do her job. He wants to replace her with a male scientist. Meanwhile, in her laboratory on the Stellar Harmony, Zareka worked alone. Her scales had returned to a normal green color, but she still felt different inside. Every time she thought about Jake Murphy, her heart beat faster and her body temperature rose. Dr. Thexmore entered her lab carrying a data pad. I have been studying the blood samples from the other affected females, he said. The results are very interesting. Zareka looked up from her work. What did you find? All of the females show the same hormone changes you experienced, but there is something else. Their brain scans show increased activity in areas related to bonding and emotional connection. It is as if contact with humans awakens parts of our minds that have been sleeping. Zareka set down her tools. What do you mean? Dr. Thexmore pulled up charts on his datapad. For thousands of years, our people have focused on logic and science. We have suppressed our emotional responses because we believe they made us weak. But humans seem to activate these suppressed systems. Is that bad? Zareka asked. I do not think so, Dr. Dexmore said. The affected females report feeling more creative, more curious, and more connected to others. Some say they feel more alive than they have in years. Before Zareka could respond, the ship's communication system activated. Commander Velshan's voice filled the room. All crew members report to your stations. You're implementing new protocols for human contact. Any female crew member who has shown reproductive activation is restricted from contact with human personnel. Zurika felt her stomach drop. He cannot do this. I am the lead xenobiologist on this mission. I have studied humans longer than anyone. Else on the fleet, Dr. Thexmore looked sad. Commander Velshan is afraid. He sees the changes in our females as a threat to Veltar society. An hour later, Zuraka stood outside the meeting room, where Jake and Lisa were supposed to meet with Veltar officials. Through the door, she could hear voices arguing in both human and Veltar languages. Elder Velnox, a male scientist from another ship, was now assigned to work with the humans instead of her. But Zerika knew he did not understand human behavior. The way she did, she pressed her ear to the door to listen. The environmental suits are necessary, Commander Velshan was saying. Our pheromones are causing biological chaos in our females. Jake's voice came through the door, calm but firm. Commander, we want to respect your concerns, but these suits will make real communication almost impossible. How can we build trust between our peoples if we cannot even see each other's faces? Trust. Commander Velshan made a harsh clicking sound. How can we trust a species that disrupts our biology just by existing? Lisa's voice joined the conversation. Sir, our analysis shows that this reaction might actually be beneficial for both our species. The affected Veltar females are showing increased creativity and problem-solving abilities. That is not your decision to make, Commander Velshan replied coldly. Zuraka had heard enough. She pressed the button to open the door and walked into the room. Every eye turned to look at her. Commander Velshan, she said, her voice strong and clear, I request permission to speak. The commander's scales darkened with anger. You are not authorized to be in this meeting, Zuraka. Return to your quarters immediately. No, Zuraka said, surprising everyone in the room, including herself. I am the chief xenobiologist on this mission. I have every right to be here. Jake looked at her with concern and admiration. She looked different than she had 3 days ago. Her posture was more confident, her voice stronger. Zurika, Jake said gently. Are you all right? The sound of her name and his voice made her scales shimmer slightly, but she stayed focused. I am better than all right. I am awake. She turned to address the room. Commander Velshan, you are making a mistake. These humans are not our enemies. They are not trying to harm us. They are showing us something we have forgotten about ourselves. Elder Velnox, the male scientist, spoke up. The biological reaction is too strong. It interferes with logical thinking. Zuraka looked at him with pity. That is where you are wrong. It does not interfere with logical thinking. It enhances it. For the first time in my life, I can think with both my mind and my heart. She walked closer to Jake, and her scales brightened. Slightly, but this time she did not run away or lose control. Jake Murphy, she said, you asked how you could help our peoples work together. I have an idea. Jake nodded. I'm listening. Do not wear the environmental suits. Instead, let me work with you to develop new ways for our species to interact safely. I have been studying the biological changes, and I believe I can help other affected females learn to control their responses. Commander Velshan stood up angrily. Absolutely not. You are too compromised to make rational decisions. Zuraka turned to face him, her yellow eyes blazing. Commander, with respect, I have never been more rational in my life. The humans have not made me weak. They have made me complete. She looked around the room at all the faces watching her. Our people have spent centuries suppressing our emotions because we thought they made us less intelligent. But what if we were wrong? What if emotions and logic working together make us stronger than either one alone? Jake stepped forward. Zuraka is right. On Earth, our greatest discoveries come from combining scientific knowledge with creativity and intuition. Maybe that's what's happening here. Lisa began typing notes on her computer. We could establish a joint research program, study this phenomenon properly instead of just fearing it. Commander Velshan was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he spoke. The risk is too great. This spreads to our homeworld. It could change Veltar society forever. Zuraka smiled, and for the first time, it was a smile that showed both logic and emotion. Commander, maybe it is time for our society to change. Outside the meeting room windows, more human ships continued to arrive. The first contact between the two species was becoming something much bigger than anyone had planned. And at the center of it all, a young Veltar scientist was discovering that sometimes the most logical thing to do is to trust your heart. 2 weeks had passed since Azarika stood up to Commander Velshan in the meeting room. Against his wishes, she had been allowed to work with Jake and Lisa on understanding the strange connection between humans and Veltar. Results were surprising. Everyone in the new joint laboratory that had been built between the human and Veltar ships. Zarika worked alongside Jake at a large table covered with papers and computer screens. Her scales stayed a calm green color now, though they still brightened slightly when Jake spoke to her. "Look at these numbers," Zarika said, pointing to data on her screen. "The affected Veltar females are solving complex problems 30% faster than before. Their creative thinking scores have doubled." Jake leaned over to look at the data. His shoulder brushed against hers, and she felt the familiar warm feeling. But now, she could control it. "That's incredible. It's like contact with humans unlocked." Abilities they already had. Lisa walked over from her workstation carrying a thick folder. "I just finished interviewing 50 affected Veltar women from different ships. They all report similar changes. Better memory, more curiosity, stronger desire to help others." Zarikon nodded. "Dr. Dexmore thinks our reproductive activation is connected to emotional awakening. When our mating systems activate, they also turn on parts of our brains that have been sleeping." Through the laboratory windows, they could see both human and Veltar crew members working together on various projects. In just 2 weeks, the two species had started to understand each other in ways no one had expected. Pete Collins, a human engineer, was teaching a group of young Veltar how to repair human technology. His patient, friendly manner made even the shyest aliens feel comfortable asking questions. Amy Stone, a human botanist, worked with Veltar plant specialists to compare Earth crops with alien food sources. The Veltar were amazed by how humans used both science and intuition to grow better plants. But the biggest surprise was happening in the ship's common areas. Veltar females who had been affected by human presence were seeking out friendships with the human crew members. They wanted to learn about human emotions, creativity, social bonding. Jake watched through the window as a young Veltar female named Kiravel laughed at something Dan Foster, a human navigator, had said. A few weeks ago, Veltar did not laugh. They considered it illogical. "It's working," Jake said to Zarika. "Your people are learning that emotions don't make them weaker. They make them more complete." Zarika felt proud and happy. She had never experienced these feelings before meeting humans, but now she understood they were good things to feel. "My people have been afraid of emotions for so long. We thought they would make us like the violent species we sometimes encounter in space, but you're learning that's not true," Lisa said. "Emotions can be gentle and helpful too. Love, friendship, curiosity, compassion. These make civilizations stronger, not weaker." As if to prove her point, Katie Bell, a human communications officer, walked into the lab with a Veltar female named Niraka. They were both smiling and talking excitedly. Zaraka Niraka called out in accented human language. "Hey, you must see what Katie has taught me. She showed me human music, and now I understand why humans sing when they are happy." Katie grinned. "Niraka has an amazing voice. I think she could be a great singer if she wanted to try." Zarika watched her fellow Veltar woman with wonder. Niraka's scales had a healthy golden glow, and her posture was confident and relaxed. She looked like a completely different person from the quiet, logical scientist she had been before. "The changes are spreading beyond just reproduction," Zarika observed. "Humans are teaching us how to be happy." Jake smiled at her words. Over the past 2 weeks, he had grown to deeply respect Zarika's intelligence and kindness. She was not just studying humans anymore. She was becoming a bridge between their two species. "You're teaching us things too," Jake said. "Your people's scientific methods are incredible. You approach problems in ways we never thought of." It was true. The human crew had learned as much from the Velta as the Veltar had learned from them. Veltar logic and human creativity. Together we're solving problems that neither species could handle alone. "Dr. Dexmore," entered the lab carrying his medical scanner. Zarika, I have the latest test results from the other ships. You will want to see these. He showed them his datapad. The screen displayed charts and graphs showing hormone levels and brain activity from hundreds of Veltar females across the fleet. The biological effects are stabilizing, Dr. Lixmore explained. The females are no longer going into heat just from seeing humans. Instead, they are maintaining a higher baseline of emotional activity. Lisa looked at the data with interest. So they're not having uncontrolled reactions anymore? Exactly, Dr. Lixmore said. They have adapted. Their bodies have found a new balance that includes both logical thinking and emotional awareness. Sagara felt relieved. This meant that the fears about chaos and disruption were unfounded. The Veltar females were not becoming unable to function. They were becoming better at functioning. Jake asked the important question. What about reproduction? Are the affected females still interested in mating? Dr. Lixmore made the clicking sound that meant amusement. Interesting, you should ask. Several of the affected females have expressed interest in learning about human bonding practices and want to understand how humans choose mates and form families. Zarka felt her scales warm slightly at this topic. She had been wondering about this herself. Human relationships seemed much more complex and caring than Veltar mating practices. Humans don't just mate for reproduction, Lisa explained. We form emotional bonds. We choose partners we enjoy spending time with, who make us feel happy and supported, like friendship, but deeper, Zareka asked. Jake nodded. Exactly. We look for someone who understands us, who we can trust completely, who makes us want to be better people. As Jake spoke, Zareka realized that she felt all of these things about him. Over the past 2 weeks, working together every day, she had come to respect his intelligence, trust his judgment, and enjoy his company more than anyone she had ever known. But she also realized that these feelings were not just the biological heat reaction anymore. They had grown into something deeper and more meaningful. She genuinely cared about Jake as a person. Before she could explore these thoughts further, an alarm sounded throughout the ship. Captain Mordek's voice came through the communication. System, all crew to stations. We are receiving a transmission from the Veltar homeworld. The High Council has heard about our situation with the humans. Zaraka felt worried. The High Council was made up of the oldest and most traditional Veltar leaders. They would not approve of the changes happening in the fleet. Jake put his hand gently on her shoulder. The touch was warm and comforting. Whatever happens, we'll face it together. Lisa gathered her research files. We have solid data showing that human-Veltar cooperation benefits both species. The Council will have to listen to scientific evidence. But as they hurried toward the meeting room, Zareka wondered if the old leaders of her people would be willing to accept change, even if that change made their species stronger and happier. Through the ship's windows, she could see the stars stretching out in all directions. Somewhere among those stars was her homeworld, where millions of Veltar lived according to the old ways of pure logic and emotional suppression. Soon, they would all learn what had happened when their people met humanity. Zareka just hoped. They would see it as the wonderful discovery she knew it to be. The message from the High Council would determine not just the future of human-Veltar relations, but the future of how her entire species understood themselves. 6 months had passed since the first meeting between humans and Veltar. The large conference room on the space station orbiting between Earth and the Veltar homeworld was filled with representatives from both species. Today would decide the future of their relationship. High Counselor Kethfar, the oldest and most respected Veltar leader, sat at the head of the curved table. His ancient scales were almost black with age, and his yellow eyes held the wisdom of centuries. Around him sat 12 other High Council members, all traditional Veltar who believed in the old ways. Across from them sat the human delegation. Admiral Sarah Martinez, the head of Earth's space exploration program, led the group. Next to her sat Jake Murphy, who had been promoted to Chief Human Veltar Relations Officer, and Lisa Park, now the official cultural ambassador. Between the two groups sat the most important people at this meeting, Zareka and several other affected Veltar females who had volunteered to speak about their experiences. High Counselor Kethvar spoke first, his voice deep and formal. We have come here to decide whether contact between our species should continue. The reports we have received are troubling. Our females have been changed in ways that go against thousands of years of Veltar tradition. Admiral Martinez leaned forward. With respect, High Counselor, the changes we have observed have been positive for both our species. Our joint research projects have yielded discoveries that neither of us could have made alone. That may be true, said Council Member Vexnor, a stern female with silver scales, but at what cost? Our females report feeling emotions that interfere with logical thinking. They sing, they laugh, they form friendships based on feelings rather than practical benefits. Zerika asked for permission to speak. When it was granted, she stood up slowly. Her scales were a healthy green color with small flecks of gold that showed her emotional growth. Honored counselors, she began, I was the first Veltar to experience the biological reaction to humans. The same fears. But I have learned that emotions do not make us weaker. They make us stronger. She activated a holographic display showing research data. In the past 6 months, the affected females in our fleet have made more scientific breakthroughs than our people typically make in 5 years. Our problem-solving abilities have increased by 40%. Our creativity scores have tripled. High Counselor Kethvar examined the data with interest. These numbers are impressive. But what about the biological disruption? The mating behaviors?
Doctor.
Dexmore, who had been invited as a medical expert, stood to answer. High Counselor, the initial mating responses have stabilized. The affected females are not in constant heat. Instead, they have developed a new emotional range that includes the capacity for deep bonding and partnership. Jake cleared his throat and was given permission to speak. If I may, honored counselors, I would like to address the partnership aspect. Zarka and I have worked together every day for 6 months. Our collaboration has produced advances in both human and Veltar technology. He looked at Zarika with obvious respect and affection. But more importantly, we have developed what humans call friendship, a bond based on mutual respect, trust, and caring. This type of relationship makes both of us better at our jobs and happier as individuals. Council Member Dexry, a younger member known for progressive thinking, asked, what about reproduction? Have any of the affected females chosen to mate with humans? The room grew quiet. This was the question everyone had been wondering about, but no one had dared to ask directly. Zerika's scales brightened slightly, but her voice remained steady. Some of us have formed deeper bonds with human partners. We are studying whether reproduction between our species is possible. But more importantly, we have learned that partnership does not have to be only about reproduction. She looked at Jake again. Humans taught us about love, a feeling that combines physical attraction, emotional connection, and deep friendship. It is something our people have never experienced, but now that we have, we do not want to give it up. Admiral Martinez presented the next part of their case. We propose a formal alliance between our species. Joint colonies where humans and Veltar can live and work together. Shared research programs, cultural exchange programs. Both our civilizations would benefit enormously. High Counselor Kethvar was quiet for a long time. Finally, he asked, what? About our traditional way of life? If emotions become common among our people, what happens to our logical approach to problems? Lisa Parks stood up with her research notes. Honored Counselor, logic and emotion do not have to be enemies. On Earth, our greatest scientists use both. Logic helps us understand how things work. Emotion helps us understand why things matter. Naraka, one of the other affected Veltar females, asked for permission to speak. High Counselor, I was terrified. When I first felt emotions, I thought I was becoming broken.
Ow.
But now I realize I was becoming complete. She gestured to Katie Bell, the human communications officer who had become her close friend. Katie taught me about compassion, joy, and hope. These feelings do not make me less intelligent. They make me care more about using my intelligence to help others. Council members whispered among themselves in the old Veltar language. After several minutes, High Counselor Kethvar called for order. We have heard arguments from both sides, he said. The evidence suggests that contact with humans does indeed change our people. The question is whether this change is beneficial or harmful. He stood up slowly, his ancient joints creaking. I have lived for 300 years according to the old ways. Logic, reason, and emotional control have guided our species to become one of the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. Zerika felt her heart sink. It sounded like he was going to reject the alliance. But then High Counselor Kethvar surprised everyone. However, I am also logical enough to recognize when new evidence requires us to change our thinking. The data is clear. Contact with humans improves our capabilities and makes our people happier. He looked directly at Zerika. Young scientist, you have shown courage in exploring this new path. Your research proves that our people can embrace emotions while maintaining our intelligence. The High Counselor turned to address both delegations. Therefore, the High Council approves continued contact between our species. We will establish the Joint Colony Program and the Cultural Exchange Initiatives. The room erupted and excited. Voices from both humans and Veltar. Zerika felt tears forming in her eyes. Another human emotion she had learned to appreciate. Jake reached over and took her hand gently. We did it, he said softly. Our people are going to be partners. Martinez stood up. There is one more thing to discuss. The first joint human-Veltar deep space exploration mission. We need volunteers for a 5-year journey to explore unknown regions of the galaxy. Zerika and Jake looked at each other. Without speaking, they both knew what they wanted to do. We. Volunteers, Zerika said. Jake nodded. Together, High Counselor Kethvar made the clicking sound that meant approval. Excellent. Let the first joint mission be led by the scientist who discovered that 2 very different species can become one people. 1 year later, the exploration ship Unity launched from the new joint space station. The crew included 50 humans and 50 Veltar working as equal partners. Captain Zeraka and First Officer Jake Murphy stood on the bridge, watching the stars ahead. Around them, their mixed crew worked together seamlessly. Human intuition combined with Veltar logic. Emotions balanced with Veltar wisdom. Dan Foster worked with Kiravel on navigation. Amy Stone collaborated with Veltar botanists on growing food during the long journey, as the ship jumped into hyperspace. Zerika thought about how much had changed since that first moment when she saw Jake Murphy. What had started as a biological reaction had become something much more important. Proof that different species could not just coexist, could make each other better. Jake squeezed her hand gently. They had decided to bond as life partners, the first official human-Veltar couple. Their relationship had become a symbol of what the 2 species could achieve together. Ready for the adventure? Jake asked. Zerika smiled, her scales shimmering. With contentment and excitement, it's ready for anything, as long as we face it together. The stars stretched endlessly ahead of them, full of mysteries waiting to be discovered by the galaxy's newest partnership. And at the heart of it all was the simple truth that love and understanding could bridge any gap even between species that had evolved on different worlds.